We are anonymous. No faces, no flags, no permission slips. And today, we're pulling on a thread that the loudest people in American politics, especially Donald Trump and the orbit of MAGA media, have been yanking for years to keep you angry at the wrong targets. Because we just got truly insane new information connected to the Epstein files, and it directly collides with what Trump world has been saying about Jeffrey Epstein's death. You already know the official declaration. Epstein died in custody, ruled a suicide. But newly released documents, newly examined video logs, and a CBS News investigation looking closely at the surveillance footage from the night he died, footage from the jail tier itself, show contradictions that should make any honest person stop, rewind, and ask, why are there still so many gaps, so many inconsistencies, and so much certainty being sold to the public by people who weren't even telling the truth about what the camera can actually see? Before we get into it, do the usual. Subscribe, drop a like, comment what you think, and if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, rate 5 stars and follow. And yeah, this isn't my normal setup. I'm on the road. I've been debating MAGA up close, face to face, and you're going to see more of that soon. But tonight, we're staying focused on one thing: what the footage shows, what the documents say, and what Trump and his allies conveniently left out. CBS breaks down the video like this. Epstein is seen for the first and only time on camera at 7:49 p.m. The Department of Justice said he was escorted to a cell from another wing of the unit. But here's the first trap in the story. You don't actually see Epstein ascend the stairwell to the cell block. Remember what FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino said in public. He bragged, "There's video clear as day. He's the only person in there and the only person coming out. You can see it." That's the kind of chest-thumping, case-closed rhetoric MAGA loves, because certainty is comforting and nuance is dangerous to a movement built on vibes. CBS zooms in and plays it in slow motion. You see a sliver of stairs. Epstein is there with the escort, and then they walk off screen. When the FBI released the video, they said anyone entering or attempting to enter the tier where Epstein's cell was located from the common area would have been captured. But look at what the camera actually covers. With the primary entrance positioned where it is, the pathway from the entrance to the stairs is completely out of view. Out of view. That means the clear as day claim is political marketing, not an objective description. For the next hour or so, the video shows corrections officers and inmates moving around as they prepare for lockdown. At 8:21 p.m., another inmate is seen being escorted toward the stairs leading to Epstein's cell area. Then no movement is detected on the stairs again. By 8:24 p.m., all inmates appear to have been taken to their cells. Now here's where it gets ugly. Tova Noel told the Inspector General she visited Epstein's cell at about 10 p.m. The footage shows her head in that direction, closer to 10:30, but not climbing the stairs. The rules require rounds every 30 minutes, but according to the report, this was the only time anyone checked on the inmates that night. And there was even a sign printed on orange paper posted at the guard station saying mandatory rounds must be conducted every 30 minutes on Epstein because there were concerns about his suicide risk. Then comes the detail that scrambles the entire nobody went up their story. At 10:38 p.m., the report says someone, probably Noel, carries a bundle of bedding or clothing up the stairs. The video barely catches movement on those stairs. CBS zooms in again, slow motion again, and multiple forensic video experts CBS spoke to were skeptical about the report's conclusion. They thought the video could be showing an inmate walking up the stairs. Authorities say this was the last time anyone approached Epstein's cell block until his body was discovered the next morning. And here's the kicker. That orange shape, this orange blob, this orange figure, has never been officially identified. We still do not know who that was, who went up to Epstein's tier the night he died. Now we have more information, and it's even worse. Newly released Department of Justice documents show investigators reviewing surveillance footage observed an orange-colored shape moving up the staircase toward the isolated locked tier where Epstein's cell was at approximately 10:39 p.m. In an observation log of that video, there's language that suggests something previously unreported by authorities. A flash of orange looks to be going up the L-tier stairs. Could possibly be an inmate escorted up to that tier. Read that again. Could possibly be an inmate escorted up to that tier. And it appears that investigators came to different conclusions depending on which branch was looking. The FBI log describes the fuzzy image as possibly an inmate. The Department of Justice Office of Inspector General logs it as an officer carrying orange linen or bedding, noting in the final report an unidentified corrections officer. Unidentified. Still unidentified. The Inspector General's final report states that at approximately 10:39 p.m., An unidentified correctional officer appeared to walk up the stairs. Official reports state Epstein died by suicide sometime before 6:30 a.m. when his body was discovered by a corrections officer delivering breakfast. But no official time of death was ever determined. And it gets worse from there. Inside the SHU that night, thousands of pages released as part of the Epstein files, part of a trove described as totaling more than 3 million documents, provide additional details about the hours between the evening of August 9th, when Epstein was last seen alive on camera, and the morning of August 10th, when his body was discovered. Records and interviews describe a largely quiet night inside the SHU where Epstein was held. Several inmates told investigators they were using drugs inside their cells. Among those interviewed were the 2 corrections officers assigned to the unit that night, Tova Noel and a materials handler named Bahome, who had not previously been publicly identified in this context. Documents show Bahome was interviewed twice, in September 2019 in sessions conducted in lieu of a grand jury subpoena. According to Noel's account, Bahome had been working multiple consecutive shifts and slept while on duty for a period between approximately 10 p.m. and midnight. So we've heard the guards fell asleep story before. But here comes a detail that should set off alarms. Investigators questioned Noel about an unexplained change in the recorded number of inmates in the SHU, an inmate count that appeared to drop from 73 to 72 sometime between 10 p.m. and 3 a.m. And by the way, that window fits very nicely into the same period when the unidentified orange figure was seen going up the stairs, captured around 10:38 to 10:39. And here's what's truly absurd. Neither officer was specifically asked about the orange-colored figure noted in the video observation log. You'd think that would be an important question, wouldn't you? Bahome told investigators he did not remember the period between 10 p.m. and midnight. He said he had no recollection of anybody walking up the stairs toward Epstein's tier at around 10:30 p.m. He added that a jail employee entering a tier alone would have violated policy. So let's translate that into plain English. I don't remember, and if it happened, it would have been against the rules. Now I try to stay away from conspiracy theories. I hate them. They poison the brain, and they're used constantly by grifters to turn confusion into cash. But when you lay out the totality of what we're talking about, the situation is weird. It's fishy, not because you need aliens or secret hit squads, but because basic procedures failed, and the records don't line up cleanly with the story being sold on cable news by Trump's people. A separate internal presentation included in the released documents described a corrections officer, believed by investigators to be Noel, carrying linen or inmate clothing up to the tier. But Noel says it wasn't her. In her interview, she said, "I never gave out linen ever because that's done on the shift prior." The 2023 Inspector General report did not identify Noel as the figure in the footage. Then the shift changed. Bahome ended his shift at midnight and was replaced by another corrections officer named Michael Thomas, the person who would discover Epstein's body. The records say Thomas and Noel failed to complete inmate counts at 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., as well as mandatory 30-minute wellness checks on Epstein. Thomas and Noel were later charged with falsifying records certifying inmate counts had been completed. Those charges were later dropped in exchange for testimony. Thomas told investigators he discovered Epstein in his cell shortly after 6:30 a.m. on August 10th, and that he ripped Epstein down from a hanging position. Investigators asked what happened to the noose. Thomas said, "I don't recall taking the noose off. I really don't. I don't recall taking the thing off from around his neck." That's a detail you'd think a person might remember. Noel, who remained standing at the cell entrance, told investigators she saw Thomas lower Epstein to the floor, but she did not see a noose around his neck, so hanging position. But no noose visible to one of the 2 people closest to the scene. And on that topic it gets worse. The noose Epstein allegedly used has never been definitively identified. According to the Inspector General's report, a noose collected at the scene was later determined not to be the one used in Epstein's death. Thomas also described Epstein as shirtless when he found him. Evidence records indicate a shirt believed to have been cut from Epstein's body was later returned from the hospital in a bag of personal belongings. Shirtless, but also a shirt cut from his body. Strange. The new documents also show that New York City's office of the chief medical examiner reviewed the jail surveillance footage 6 days after Epstein's death as part of its investigation and concluded the video was too blurry to identify any individuals. Hours later, the office publicly ruled Epstein's death a suicide. The medical examiner did not provide an estimate of how long Epstein might have been dead before his body was discovered. Dr. Michael Baden, a forensic pathologist retained by Epstein's brother, previously told CBS News that Epstein had likely been dead for several hours before he was found, but because the body had been moved, determining the time of death was impossible. When CBS contacted Bahome for comment, his attorney said, "Ms. Noel will not be making any statements or attempts to clarify any aspect of this situation. So let's step back. What do we have? We have a camera angle that does not clearly show the path from the entrance to the stairs. We have public officials, Trump-aligned voices claiming the footage proves clear as day that no one could have entered. We have a documented flash of orange going up the stairs at around 10:39 p.m., with investigators disagreeing whether it might be an inmate or an officer. We have an unidentified figure. We have mandatory rounds not done. We have guards asleep. We have a mysteriously changing inmate count from 73 to 72 with no explanation in that window. We have a discovery scene where one officer can't remember removing the noose. Another says she didn't see one, and the noose collected later isn't definitively the one used. We have a shirtless body and a shirt cut from the body. We have no official time of death, and we have a medical examiner saying the footage is too blurry to identify people. Now let's talk about Trump, because you asked me to, and because Trump deserves it. Trump and his ecosystem HO have spent years weaponizing the Epstein story like a blunt object, not to get you transparency, not to protect victims, not to fix the failures that let a high-profile detainee die in a federal facility, but to point the camera away from themselves and toward whatever enemy of the weak keeps their base frothing. Trump amplified insinuations and conspiracy-laced narratives right after Epstein died. His allies have pushed certainty they can't honestly justify from the video. And Trump himself has a long, publicly documented history of praising Epstein in the past, only to later pretend he barely knew him when it became politically toxic. This is what Trump does. He floods the zone. He turns every serious scandal into a partisan carnival. He encourages you to just ask questions, but only the questions that lead you away from his circle and toward his chosen targets. And when new evidence complicates the story, when the camera angle doesn't match the bravado, when the logs hint at movement, when basic procedures were violated, Trumpism doesn't respond with accountability. It responds with louder slogans, more certainty, and more blame shifting. Because Trump doesn't need you informed. He needs you activated. He needs you angry. He needs you chasing shadows so you don't notice the real failures in plain sight. Negligence, incompetence, and a justice system that mysteriously collapses exactly when powerful people are at risk. Leave a comment with your theory, but back it with facts. Subscribe so you don't miss the next breakdown. Share this with someone who still thinks Trump's loud confidence equals evidence. And remember, the mask isn't the point. The point is what you do after you learn. The system is willing to lie to your face. We are anonymous. We are legion. And we are not done.